Kilimanjaro lies a land rich in game, rich in all the animals that are part of what we mean by Africa. But there's a cloud over the land, literally a cloud of dust created by herds of cattle that commute daily across the plains in search of food. Slowly but surely, they are turning the land into a desert. The cattle belong to the Maasai, those tall and elegant herdsmen who have come to symbolize the African warrior. But gathering in their wake are vultures, evidence not only of death, but of changing times. Can the wildlife here survive? The answer is linked to the Maasai's own survival. At 19,000 feet, Kilimanjaro is the highest point of Africa. The mountain overlooks the rolling plains of Ambolesi, a dry land with little water. A lion rambles his way through the bush. Few animals enjoy such a sense of security. In this way, at least, the lion is a king among beasts. It shares this distinction with the elephant, but neither of these animals can sense the danger that awaits them. It is not something they would recognize, for they live at the center of a controversy. In the heart of Ambolesi lies an area of marshland surrounded by good grazing. It is here that the cattle of the Maasai tribe come to feed. But it is also here that vast numbers of plains animals graze. Grant's gazelles with white rumps and gracefully swept back horns. And close by, the diminutive Thompson's gazelles with twitching tails. Herds of wildebeest feed among the thick grasses, their heads and tails flailing against the flies. Once you could have counted wildebeest by the millions in East Africa, and they are still found here in sizable numbers. Zebra, that have suffered such a catastrophic decline elsewhere in Africa, also populate parts of Ambolesi in something like their former abundance. The Maasai call the game their hard times cattle. The herdsmen do not normally hunt for food, but in bad times they will prey on game. In this way, Maasai cattle and Maasai game have coexisted at Ambolesi for several generations. But this may end. Recent drought and destruction of the range has killed thousands. Eventually, more and more wild animals will die and be driven off in the hope of saving cattle. A conflict is building beneath the sunlit stage of Kilimanjaro. Still, the giraffe bend to browse the low bushes with imperious grace. The vertical range over which this animal can safely feed stretches from 8 feet to its standing height of 18 feet. Strangely, their necks have exactly the same number of vertebrae as our own. Scarcely noticed by the larger animals is the oxpecker, a busy little bird that inspects nostrils and ears, performing the useful function of removing ticks. But if Ambolesi is known for one animal above the others, it's the black rhinoceros, which browses as much as 200 pounds of food a day to maintain its great bulk. The rhino has been labeled an anachronism, an animal on the verge of extinction. But odd as it seems, it's well suited to the ecology of the East African bush. It even benefits the environment, altering it by mowing it down, but also renewing it with its droppings. Nature is never static. It is always changing, always experimenting. This curious bird is a good example. It's an Egyptian vulture, a scavenger. In the not-too-distant past, it learned a new trick. It learned that throwing stones near ostrich eggs produces food. Unfortunately, this remarkable example of tool-using behavior has not been completely mastered by the vulture. It knows that stone throwing works, but it's seemingly unaware of the exact logical connection between the food and its actions. The use of tools by wild animals is exhibited by only a handful of species. Each in its different way points to some new course in the future path of evolution. Science holds that species evolve through trial and error. but it's hard to imagine this many errors. The young brown Egyptian vulture has acquired the egg-breaking technique early in life, but if anything, he's even more inept than the adult. He tries to nibble his way in, but his bill is not massive enough to grip the large egg. More or less by accident, he picks up a sharp, heavy stone and by dint of good judgment or sheer luck, cracks the egg. Encouraged by his success, he attempts to climb his way in, but the egg will not part with its contents so easily. It's left to the adult to complete the break-in job. A direct hit and the egg is opened. Once a hole is made, it's only a short struggle to break it open completely. This behavior is just one of the ways in which nature has changed here. But in this part of Africa, as elsewhere in the world, the dominant medium of change is not nature, but man. The Maasai have not succumbed to the lure of the cities like other African tribes. A Maasai's wealth is measured by the number of cattle he owns, so he never slaughters them. Cattle and animal populations at Ambolesi rise and fall in response to rainfall. Over the long term, modern veterinary practices are helping keep more and more cattle alive, with the result that stock which once grazed comfortably beside the game now compete for the same range. Maasai drive their herds from the safety of their bomas or corrals to the rich grazing in the center of Ambolesi. This regular twice-a-day commuting has created a mile-wide path across the landscape. As they walk, the puffs of dust testify to their powers of destruction. Cattle cross the desolate plains, their footsteps create scars stretching into the distance. This is ruined land, a small piece of nothingness. Parts are still dotted with vegetation, but much is seemingly beyond redemption, pounded by the regular marching of the herds. Of course, there are still many wild animals here. Elephant, lion, buffalo, and giraffe wander away from the cattle paths. But the menace is real, and as the cattle increase year by year, so does the area they despoil. Just how do the wild animals adapt to this change? We'll see in a moment. The lifeless plains that the Maasai cattle have created below Kilimanjaro are all but a desert. But a desert in which every night herds of wildebeest find safety from lions. But the safety gained from predators is more than matched by the losses due to lack of food. A young zebra kicks up the dust with every step. There's not much to eat out here. The rhino kicks up the dust too. Even this giant is affected, for he must wander farther now in order to browse. But dust is useful to some. Elephants love to dust themselves. It helps to keep their skins free of irritating ticks. It's a habit they learn early in life. This youngster doesn't do it well, but in a few years' time, he'll be an expert. In a certain sense, the elephant's dust baths are revealing, for the dusty destruction of the Ambolesi grassland is neither simple nor one-sided. Elephants are destructive animals in their own right. When a herd like this passes through an area, it leaves a trail of trampled grass and a minor dust cloud behind it. But the trampling of elephants is not relentless like the trampling of the cattle. They don't come and go in such regular fashion, and their routes are variable. But most important, there are not that many of them. Even when elephants destroy an area, they eventually move on, if they are able, and in time the environment will recover. In this way, nature softens the destructive power of large animals. In the case of elephants, this is considerable, tearing down bushes, ripping up trees, and even eating the spiky acacia. But like the rhino, they also serve the environment. Their droppings hold and help to spread seeds and regenerate the landscape. Elephants are part of the scheme of things. They fit. The open spaces are also home to some unusual creatures. One of the world's heaviest flying birds, the Kori bustard, lives here. Like semaphore signals, he flies flag-like feathers from neck and tail, visible for miles across the flat grasslands. It's his nuptial display, calculated to repel rival males and attract his mate. But his mate doesn't seem unduly impressed. Still, he continues, puffing his feathers out larger and larger. He begins to call, proclaiming his ownership of this little patch of African sun. His excitement builds as he gobbles like a turkey and performs what is called a neck throw. For the Kori bustard, the plains are a display ground, and during the breeding season, he flies his flags all day long. Other animals enjoy the freedom of the open spaces, but it is only a seeming freedom. These cheetah cubs are members of a cat family that are among the more efficient of the plains game predators and the fastest things on four legs. Like almost all infants of the higher mammals, their first weeks and months are filled with play. Play which sometimes includes even the end of this mother's tail. Leaving the cubs behind, the female sets off to see if the kill that she made earlier in the day is still intact, or whether the scavengers have finished it off. Marabou storks circle overhead, perhaps over her hiding place. This time she's lucky. Miraculously, neither marabous nor any of the scavengers have spotted her kill. The Thompson's gazelle is where she left it, well hidden behind a bush. She pulls it into the open where she can keep a lookout for approaching danger. For even predators like the cheetah are prey themselves for that larger predator, the lion. The cheetah, like the plant eaters it preys on, are affected by the destructive pressure from the cattle. So the population of cheetahs must also shrink. Never an abundant animal, still widely sought for its skin, the cheetah lives literally in a state of siege and is rapidly losing. She eats while she can, but she can't eat in peace. Cheetahs often have their prey taken from them by hyenas or lions. She has other reasons to be nervous. Hunting dogs and hyenas may attack her young, but she must leave them in order to hunt, and thereby provide the milk her cubs require. Heading back, she pauses for a drink. Before she settles, a good look around to see that all is clear. The cheetah is unusual looking. More dog-like in appearance than feline, it has non-retractable claws, and in this respect is unique among cats. Satisfied, she walks with barely a glance at the vultures and marabous. She's within sight of her cubs now, and she can enjoy a moment of relaxation, a time to clean herself and roll in the grass. Overhead, the scavengers circle. They could finish her gazelle now if they chose to, but they've got their eyes on bigger things, as we shall see. Beneath Kilimanjaro, predator scavengers like the hyena and pure scavengers like the vultures may be the only creatures who have things all their own way. They are flourishing, for it makes no difference to them whether they prey on the growing ranks of Maasai cattle or the dwindling numbers of wild animals. Hyenas stand at the top of the scavenger peck order, while the vultures wait patiently in the wings, idly preening and passing the time. The hyena continues his meal. A silverback jackal may be able to drive off a few vultures, but he too must wait respectfully for the hyena to finish before he feeds. A marabou stork sweeps overhead, but he's in no great hurry to land. Wings spread, he circles before drifting slowly toward the ground. Perfect sailplanes, marabous can hang on the air for hours with only the barest movement of their great wings. Legs down as air brakes and wing feathers spread to avoid stalling, he sweeps low over the ground. A couple of flaps, a bit of a bounce, and he's safely down. Still, the vultures sweep in, intent on joining the feast. This is a young white-backed vulture, but he gets a not altogether friendly reception from two others as he lands. These vultures seem to be fighting with their feet as well as their bills, unusual behavior for vultures. They lunge and thrust at each other, but it's all show, and they seldom do any real damage. It's one of those attempts to put the newcomer in his place, to get the peck order sorted out. This time, it's a griffon vulture that's coming in. He spreads his wings to make himself seem larger and more formidable, but his right to be there is disputed by another griffon, and the newcomer slinks away, head down, in submission. Jackal, marabou, vulture all wait patiently for the hyena to fill himself. He's fat enough already, but he'll gorge until he can eat no more before leaving his place for the others to feed. Hyenas are not the arch scavengers they're made out to be. In fact, they often kill for themselves, but are then chased from their prey by lions. A tawny eagle uses his air power to slip in and grab a tidbit from the ground. Small scraps are scattered, much to the delight of the marabous that set about their cleanup operation. The huge gular sac that dangles from the neck is not a food pouch. It's a specially developed visual signal which plays a part in courtship and dominance rituals. Three or four different vultures may be in action at the same time. The white bird is an Egyptian vulture, but most are griffons and whitebacks. Greedily, the large vultures plow into the remains of the carcass while the marabous and smaller species wait on around the fringe of the pack. The reason why vultures do so well in Ambolesi isn't hard to find. The fact that the Maasai don't slaughter their cattle means that when the animals die, they provide a plentiful source of food for the scavengers. The numbers of wild animals which have been driven from their range may be an even greater source of supply. Once the carcass has been cleaned, it's the turn of the bone pickers. But there's conflict here, too. One tawny eagle has another pinned to the ground. But once he lets go, his rival is off again to continue his meal. scavenging is inevitably messy, and the vultures move on to a pool to clean. The vulture's head and neck are unencumbered with feathers. This is an adaptation which makes it easier for the vulture to plunge its head inside carcasses, and consequently also easy to clean. Eat, wash up, dry out. That's the scavenger's routine. The vultures preen and then hang themselves out to dry in the African sun. This behavior also serves to cool them. Marabous hang out their wings too, but this may be to expose ectoparasites to the cleansing power of the sun, as well as to cool them. With an apparently inexhaustible supply of carrion, the scavengers would seem to have an assured future. But the dynamics of nature could easily swing against them, for the Maasai are destroying the habitat, not only for the animals, but for their cattle as well. For the cheetah cubs, it's another day successfully got through. Tomorrow, mother may have to kill again. But just how much longer will the animals of Ambolesi be able to survive? How long will it be before the Maasai, intent on increasing the size of their herds, totally denude the landscape? How long will it be before the cattle are herded from one isolated grazing ground to the next, across empty stretches of barren wilderness? Efforts are underway by the New York Zoological Society and the World Bank at Ambolesi to restore the damaged range, to open a park, and to stabilize the animal populations. But their efforts wait on Kenya government action. If these projects fail, the animals will not be the only ones to lose. The Maasai themselves will also lose. For lodged in the fate of wild Ambolesi are also the seeds of a human disaster.